These protests brought up a lot of issues that we have to address. We have spent years changing the nature of policing in this city, and we have much, much more to do. We all know that. And last night was a difficult, complex situation. I'm going to speak about what our officers went through, but I first want to say there were people who came there to peacefully protest. There were others who came there, obviously, to try and incite acts of violence. But it's our obligation as a city government, it's the NYPD's obligation to find the best possible way to keep peace, to protect everyone, to avoid anything that allows further violence to occur. But that means also recognizing that any aggressive act towards a peaceful protester sends exactly the wrong message. It's wrong in every way, but it also sets us back. There were elected officials at this protest, some of whom were pepper sprayed. What a horrible, horrible situation that the people who represent us, who are there on behalf of their community, peacefully observing, trying to help keep the peace, that they ended up being victims of pepper spraying. That's unacceptable. And we need to understand exactly why that happened. And there needs to be accountability. We've seen some videos that do not reflect the philosophy of this city, the values of this city, the values of this administration, do not reflect the values of the NYPD. We've seen some videos where protesters were handled very violently and roughly, and that is not neighborhood policing, and we will not accept that kind of behavior from any police officer. But I'll tell you at the same time, we saw acts of violence from protesters that have nothing to do with the tradition of peaceful democratic protest that has pervaded the history of New York City. New York City honors the right to protest. The NYPD has protected protesters for generations of every point of view and done it well. But some protesters last night came with an agenda of violence and incitement, and they meant to harm police officers, and they did harm police officers. They meant to attack police vehicles, and they did. They meant to attack police precincts. And that is all purely unacceptable. It does not reflect our values. We will not accept that. I want to remind everyone that the man and woman on the beat made a decision to join the police in the name of peace. They are not the policymakers. They are the people trying to protect their fellow New Yorkers. They were subjected to horrible, vile things last night and tremendous violence, and that will not stand. Because they are working men and women, and any protester that tries to take the humanity away from a police officer and devalue them just because they are a public servant is no better than the racists who devalue people of color, and particularly black men in America. So if you're a peaceful protester, we will go to the ends of the earth to protect your right to protest, whatever your viewpoint. We will always make sure you have that right. But if you are there to incite violence, we cannot and will not allow that. A lot happened last night. I could tell from being there how much was happening, how complex it was, how dangerous the situation was. We need to get to the bottom of exactly what happened and how we can do things better. I'm going to initiate an independent review immediately of the events of last night. I'll announce the details later on today. But I want to know exactly what happened, why it happened, and what can be done better. I want there to be accountability for anyone, whatever their status. But I also want to know what we can do better to avoid any acts of violence. And we are working as we speak today to make sure that the protests in the days to come will be as peaceful as humanly possible, that there will be different protocols and approaches to ensure that the right to protest is honored and that everyone can do so in a peaceful manner. I also want to say that we will engage community leaders and community members immediately to determine how to approach protest better and differently. We're going to engage members of the Cure Violence movement who've done outstanding work in their neighborhoods stopping violence, to work on how to make sure protests occur without violence as well. We're going to reach to the grassroots, to elected officials, community leaders, Cure Violence movement leaders, to determine the best way in the weeks and months ahead to honor the rights of all New Yorkers and keep the peace simultaneously. It was a long and difficult night, and we intend to do better. With that, I'll turn to Commissioner Dermot Shea.